Okay, welcome back. We're on page 417. We're getting ready to start a new topic on data validation. So I'm going to talk philosophy for a while before we actually start doing this, because there's some good stuff here. The goal of doing input validation is to make sure that you just don't enter data in that's just garbage, because you don't want to break your spreadsheet. For example, if I said it had a value times another value and I was expecting it to be a number, and you type the word hello in there and you know moved on to the next cell, the formula is not going to work because it doesn't know how to take 12 times hello. So there is some built-in tools for doing input validation. There's another term that I use a lot in some other courses. It's called source data automation. And the idea, the philosophy behind this is that, you know, one way of doing error detection and correction is to say, aha, you made a mistake. Okay, that's one way of doing it. You know, saying, the other way is to prevent them from making a mistake. Fix it so that they cannot possibly make a mistake. Isn't that better than waiting to afterwards and saying, aha? Okay, so source data automation is about returning feedback to the user as soon as possible that something went wrong, so they can fix it immediately and move to the next cell and keep going. It's not necessarily to wait till you filled in all the information. You know, for example, let's say you're filling out a form on a website, right? And so you type in this, you know, your name and address and all the rest of the stuff, and you finally, you know, tons and tons and tons of data. And then you hit the submit button, and it comes back and says, "Aha! You misspelled the state." Well, wouldn't it have been better as soon as you hit state, it would have immediately said, "Wait a minute, there's a problem," and rather than waiting for me to fill out the entire dang form. So source data automation is about immediately telling you have a problem, or even better, is fixing, you know, put it on a pick list where I can pick Texas off the list. That way I can't possibly misspell. Okay, cool. So the philosophy behind source data automation and input validation, one is to make sure you get the feedback quick and perhaps even prevent errors. And input validation is just to keep the dang spreadsheet from breaking, because I don't like broken spreadsheets. Okay, so to do one of these things, I'm going to go to a blank spot. Let's say I'm going to put I'm going to prompt somebody for age. So I'm just going to put a little thing here, age. And this is the cell where they're going to enter a person's age. Okay, so you might think about that a minute and go, well, what are the rules? If you were just to kind of make up some rules for what a valid age for a person would be, you'd probably think about it and you go, well, it's got to be a number, because, you know, I can't type the word hello. And I don't want you to type, you know, TWO for 2. No, I want you to use, you know, the Arabic 2 number, the numeral. So it has to be a number. I don't want you to say that you're 2.5 years old, so I want whole numbers. You can't put in a -44 or 4,000. So perhaps I want a minimum range and a maximum range. Okay, so isn't that pretty cool? So fix it so that they can't inadvertently put in their zip code, for example, in the age box. Okay, so the way you do this is you go to the data tab, and there's a thing for data validation. I'm going to click this, and you get some choices, and there's a gazillion choices, but I'm going to go through an example, and then we'll come back and look at the choices. So what is my evaluation criteria? Well, I want to pick the one called whole number. Okay, so what that basically means is it's going to take no decimal points. And I can't. So right off the bat, I fixed it so that you can't type the word hello, and you can't type in fractional numbers. You know, 2.5. Okay, I got that fixed. So what would be the minimum? Well, I will allow you to do a 0, and I don't know, maximum maybe like 125. That's pretty doggone good. So hit the button. All right, now I'm going to type in 33 or 44, and it's going to say no problem at all. Cool. Let's go here and let's type hello and move on. And it comes back and says, whoa, the data you've entered is not valid. Would you like to retry? And I go, oh, yeah. That's what I meant. Okay, it's 4,000. No. How about 400? No. About 40. Okay. So it actually does several things. It does range. It does data type. So it's actually a pretty good way of doing it. There's an entire list of these types of data validations. If you turn to page 418, they have one of those little lists. So the list is whole numbers. That's what we just did, whole numbers. Decimal, essentially the same thing, except do I want to allow decimal points or not? So again, validation, I go in here for decimal points, and you know, it looks the same. It's just allowing you know, decimal numbers. I'm going to skip list for just a minute. The date, you know, what is a valid looking date? And that looks just like you'd expect. You know, and again, you can have a minimum date and a maximum date. Time, same thing. You know, you can't have any goofy things in there. So just make sure it looks like a time and has a starting and stopping. Text length. This is, I don't really know exactly, but let's say this was a password thing, and it has to be between 8. Whoa. It has between 8 and 15. Okay, so that's how long that has to be in there. So if I go in here and I say HA or something, it's going to say no, that's not good enough. And if I went in here and put in too many letters, it'll come back and say no, that's good enough. But I put in exactly somewhere between 8 and 10, you know, however many that is, it says okay, that's good. All right, cool. So text length. I left off the list one on purpose because the list one is actually one of the best, because you don't have to, let's say for example I'm entering grades. So what are the acceptable grades? Well, you could have an A or a B or a C or a D or an F. Let's say that's the only acceptable grades there are. So it has to be exactly one character, and it has to be between an A and a, you know, A through F, and that's it. That's the only choices I got. So I'm going to go here. Whoops, sorry. I'm going to go here and do, I'm going to go to my data validation. I'm going to pick the one called list. And the list says, where is the list of acceptable values? This is the list of acceptable values right here. And then this little thing called in cell dropdown, you're going to like that. So now when I click on this cell, I get this little doodad here, and I just pick it off the list. Okay, so I really can't type E. Well, I guess I could. But I want to fix it so that you don't have to do hardly any typing whatsoever. You just type things. By the way, did you notice it's not case sensitive? If I could do like an A, it goes, yeah, that's close enough. So this is pretty cool because, you know, instead of having spell out all the states, wouldn't it be cool if you spelled them correctly someplace in a list, and then you went in here and just made this like a drop down, so they wouldn't have to type Mississippi or Minnesota. Texas I could probably type. I'm not sure I could type a bunch of the other states. I'm a terrible speller. So this is in addition to preventing errors, this one is actually, catching errors. This one's actually kind of more towards the prevention, isn't it? Because if I pick it off the list, it's gonna be right. Okay. So now let's dress this up a little bit, because the messages they had were pretty annoying. So for example, here I'm going to go back and just edit this guy one more time. All right. So what would the input message appear? Now this is going to appear in like a little floating text box. So the title would be something like "Enter your age," and then the message would be a valid age is between 0 and 125. That would be kind of, you don't have to put the criteria in there, but don't you think you owe it to them to say, here's kind of what I was expecting, right? I think that's pretty cool. And here's the one for the error message, and the title could be something like, I don't know, input error. And then you could type some sort of a message that says, your input was not within 0 and 125. Again, you don't have to repeat the range in here. It's just kind of cool. So when I first click on the cell, I get this that little thing that pops up and says enter your age. And it reminds me what the valid thing is. But if I ignored that and typed in minus 33 and hit the button, it comes back, and now I have my own custom error message that says whatever the heck I wanted it to be. You know, your input was not within 0 and 125. So you could custom make your own error message if you wanted. Kind of cool. All right, so let's go back to 33 and make that guy go away. So you can customize whether or not you want a message to show up, and then you can customize the error message if you get it wrong. So that's kind of cool. On page 425, they kind of have this wild leap of fantasy here. They talk about codification schemes. And I'm not sure why it's even in this section of the book. Basically what they're talking about is they're using an Excel formula to create a new piece of data. You know, for example, in their particular case, you know, I've got a person's name, and I got the date that they worked, and maybe they're, you know, the patient number. I'm making this stuff up as I go along. So patient 13. And so what they basically did is they just went in here and just combined all these things together. They made it so they just, you know, combined the Bob plus the date plus this patient number, and strung it all out together. And so, you know, it's just a codification scheme of how they could do their thing. You can look at the example in the book. Again, it's kind of, I'm not sure why it's here. But there is one cool thing that they mention in here, which kind of off the topic here, and that is a new function called text. So let's say, for example, I go here and I type 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And I want to have this formatted as a social security number, for example. And I don't want to change the format. I just want to have a formula that, so I want it, sometimes I want it like this, and sometimes I want it formatted as with the dashes, right? So I get to choose. So I don't want to go here to you know, to home and go into format and make the changes. Instead, I want to use a formula. So I'm going to do this thing called text. And text says, what is it? And then you can type in the format text. Now there's an entire, I mean, there could be an entire lesson on just this one topic. So just bear with me, and I'm going to cheat and just do one. Pound sign means numbers. So social security numbers look like, you know, 1, 2, 3, dash, 4, 5, dash, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, that's the way they look, right? So when I do that, it has taken that and basically created me a format using formulas. So instead of going here and doing our own formatting, cell formatting, I'm doing formatting with formulas using this text function. The next thing to talk about on 428 is the text-to-speech, where you can actually pull out chunks of text and have it speak, particularly with error messages and stuff. I am not going to do that, so I'm kind of moving on. The next one talks, we're kind of changing topics now, because we kind of went off on a wild tangent on the codification thing. And now we're kind of back down to ground zero, talking on page 430 about user-friendly applications. And again, it's kind of difficult to tell what they're talking about until you get into it. So one of the things you could ask is, well, what the heck is the difference between just a plain old spreadsheet and an application? Well, to tell you the truth, there's not that much difference. We're going to be doing some macros that kind of automate, you know, if you have repetitive things you have to do over and over and over, wouldn't it be kind of cool if you just made that so you could just hit a button or do a keyboard shortcut and it would do it for you? So it's all about making things user-friendly, which is what the topic of this thing's all about. But this is a good place to stop for the 15-minute mark. We'll pick this thing up again in just a few.